Most people think toxic relationships are built on obvious red flag shouting, "Welcome to emotional shadow jealousy, control, or betrayal." But the truth is far more subtle, far more psychological, and far more hidden than we like to admit. The most dangerous dynamics inside toxic relationships rarely announce themselves. They slip into the connection quietly, disguised as passion, vulnerability, or just how love works. And by the time you finally realize something is wrong, the emotional damage is already unfolding. What if the very behaviors you believe are signs of love are actually signals of manipulation? What if the comfort you hold on to is the same thing that's quietly destroying you? This is the secret reality that shapes toxic relationships long before they turn. Obviously toxic, and most people never recognize the early signs. To understand how these relationships form and why they feel so powerful, we need to go back to the psychological foundations first, explored by figures like Freud, Bowlby, and later, modern relationship theorists like Dr. Gottman and Dr. Karpman. They all pointed to one idea that resurfaces again and again. Humans are wired to repeat emotional patterns from their past, even when those patterns hurt them. Bowlby's attachment theory revealed how early childhood experiences shape the way adults bond, how we chase, avoid, cling, or shut down. Meanwhile, Karpman's drama triangle uncovered the tragic dance of victim, rescuer, and persecutor that defines so many unstable relationships. But here's the twist most people don't expect. These dynamics don't appear only in obviously abusive situations. They quietly grow in relationships that start beautifully with intensity, chemistry, and connection that feels different from anything you've ever had. And that's exactly why the fall hits harder later. The origin of toxic dynamics usually begins in the honeymoon phase, when emotions are high and boundaries are low. In the beginning, two people bring their history's unresolved hurt, unmet needs, childhood wounds, and private insecurities. Yet they disguise them behind affection, romance, and the thrill of newness. What feels like deep emotional bonding is often the merging of two unhealed stories. If one person fears abandonment and the other craves control, they will feel magnetically drawn to each other without realizing the psychological trap forming beneath them. A controlling partner feels powerful when someone depends on them. An anxious partner feels secure when someone pays intense attention to them. Both people feel fulfilled at first. Both feel chosen. This is how toxic patterns begin, not through conflict, but through compatibility of wounds. As the relationship grows, the dynamic intensifies. The controlling partner begins subtly setting the rules. How often you text, what tone you use, who you talk to, what makes him feel insecure. The anxious partner becomes more compliant, because compliance feels safer than conflict. But over time the demands increase. The expectations become heavier, and suddenly the smallest misunderstanding becomes a threat. A delayed reply is interpreted as betrayal. A neutral tone becomes evidence of withdrawal. Emotional storms erupt from tiny triggers, and both partners find themselves stuck in a cycle of reaction, apology, guilt, and temporary calm. At this stage, neither understands the full picture. They only feel the emotional volatility, the highs and lows, the unpredictability that slowly becomes normal. Eventually, the breaking points appear. One partner begins to feel suffocated, monitored, or emotionally drained. The other feels neglected, unappreciated, or suspicious. Fights become more frequent, and every conflict reveals deeper emotional fractures. Words turn sharp, silence becomes a weapon, and affection becomes conditional. The relationship shifts from connection to survival, to people trying to protect themselves while hurting each other. And this is where the most dangerous mindset forms. The belief that love requires suffering. Once someone convinces themselves that pain equals passion, leaving becomes harder than staying. They fear losing the connection, even though the connection itself is destroying them. This emotional confusion is exactly what keeps toxic dynamics alive. The consequences on emotional intimacy are devastating. Trust erodes slowly, replaced by fear, doubt, and hypervigilance. Instead of opening up, partners start hiding their feelings to avoid triggering an argument. Instead of communicating, they monitor, test, or manipulate each other. Vulnerability becomes risky, affection becomes inconsistent, and the relationship shifts into a psychological battleground controlled by insecurity. The moments of peace feel like relief, not love. The moments of chaos feel inevitable, and attempts to fix the relationship often fail because both partners focus on the symptoms: jealousy, anger, silence, or emotional distance without understanding the deeper patterns driving them. When people try to repair a toxic relationship without addressing its roots, they often fall into the same loops. They promise to communicate better, but never address the fear beneath their communication. They set boundaries, but never explore why those boundaries were missing in the first place. They apologize for behaviors without understanding the wounds that created those behaviors. And each attempt feels hopeful at first, yet collapses again because the underlying emotional dynamics remain untouched. Toxic relationships don't fail because people don't love each other. They fail because love alone cannot heal unexamined wounds. Modern data reveals something even more surprising. The patterns that appear inside toxic relationships today are nearly identical to those documented decades ago. Studies show that manipulation tactics like gaslighting and emotional withdrawal repeat in predictable ways. Communication research shows that couples who consistently use blame, criticism, or stonewalling are far more likely to break down emotionally. And psychological analyses show that people with insecure attachment styles are more likely to stay in harmful relationships, even when they know they should leave. Technology has only amplified these patterns. Constant texting, digital surveillance, social media jealousy, and expectations of instant responses create new ways to trigger old wounds. The platforms have changed, but the emotional dynamics have not. These cycles continue because toxic relationship patterns follow a predictable structure: idealization, devaluation, conflict, reconciliation, and repeat. Once inside the loop, partners mistake intensity for intimacy and trauma, bonding for connection. Some stay because the unpredictable reinforcement makes them feel addicted. Some stay because they feel responsible for fixing the other person. And some stay simply because they fear being alone more than they fear being unhappy. The tragedy is that many people in toxic relationships don't realize how deeply the dynamic affects their sense of self, how it reshapes their confidence, their emotional boundaries, their identity, and their ability to love healthily in the future. But understanding these hidden dynamics leads us to 3 essential takeaways. First, relationships don't become toxic overnight. They grow from unaddressed emotional wounds and unconscious patterns. Recognizing these patterns early is the most powerful form of prevention. Second, emotional intensity is not proof of love. Consistency, respect, and emotional safety are far stronger indicators of real connection than passion driven by insecurity. And third, communication alone cannot fix a toxic relationship. Only self-awareness and healing can. If you don't understand your triggers, your history, and your attachment style, you will repeat the same emotional loops with new partners. As you think about the secret dynamics of toxic relationships, consider this: trust and love are far more fragile than we believe. They can be built slowly through vulnerability, but destroyed quickly through fear. And once trust breaks repeatedly, even the strongest love begins to collapse. The question is not just whether your relationship is healthy now, but whether the patterns forming today will strengthen you or slowly hollow you out. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to subscribe for deeper insights into relationships, emotional intelligence, and human psychology. Your growth begins with awareness, and this channel is here to guide you every step of the way.